Part 1. Seattle's night was drenched in drizzle, yet the air still reeked of blood. From the summit of Capitol Hill, I stood motionless, gazing down at the abandoned cathedral. Its gray stone steps were cracked like the teeth of an ancient giant, the fractured angel relief stained with dark red streaks. Perhaps it was blood, perhaps only rust and moss. But after more than 4 centuries of existence, I had never mistaken that scent. A cold wind whipped the hem of my black cloak. The chill against my skin had long ceased to bother me. When you are dead, temperature is merely a hazy concept, like the memory of a mother's warm hand on your forehead. My mother, she had died in a train accident in the south of France, where lavender fields stretched to the horizon. I still remember the scent of lavender mingled with fresh blood and burning metal. A trivial death for an extraordinary woman. That was the last time I cried, and it was also when I realized my mission: to protect humanity. How ironic that a creature like me should harbor the desire for salvation. I smirked. 417 years, and I still hadn't learned to smile without revealing my fangs. In the abandoned church below, flickering lights began to dance behind the shattered stained glass windows. The Apocalyptic Light cult had gathered, just as my intel suggested. These fanatical extremists believed the world needed to end to be reborn. Humanity's final burst before returning to dust. At least, that's what they proclaimed in the recruitment documents disseminated on the dark web, which I'd stumbled upon. It sounded ridiculous. Apocalypse, Judgment Day, many had dreamed of it, but no one truly understood the meaning of eternal death. I had traveled a very long road on that path, and I had yet to see any light at the end of the tunnel. Only endless darkness, without beginning, without end. Music began to emanate from below, a low, guttural melody like the groaning of tormented souls. It was time. I took a deep breath, not because I needed air, but out of a habit lingering from my human life. My body dissolved into the night, moving as swiftly as a shadow gliding down the hillside, merging with the thick darkness surrounding the cathedral. This wasn't the first time I'd tracked a mystical cult. For decades, I had always sought out places where supernatural threats existed. From dark sorcery in 1700s Prague to the blood rituals of Amazonian natives as Europeans flocked to the new continent. Cults always worshipped what they didn't understand, wielding powers far beyond their control, and I was always there to end what they began. Pressing my face against a broken window pane, I saw them. About 20 people in black robes with red trim, standing in a circle beneath the church's dark dome. In the center of the circle was a stone altar, on which rested a tarnished brass bowl. A tall man, his face concealed beneath a hood, stepped forward to the altar, clutching a gleaming, curved knife. "Brothers and sisters," his voice echoed in the empty space. "Tonight is the night of beginning. Blood will flow and the sky will rain crimson. This is the first sign. The chosen one will appear, and this world shall be reborn in fire and blood." Cheers erupted, heads nodding in agreement. He waved his hand and a woman was led forward. She was not bound, nor did she struggle, but her eyes were vacant, as if hypnotized. The man grasped her wrist, raising it high. "The blood of the willing," he shouted, "the blood of the faithful will open the first gate." The knife slid swiftly across the woman's wrist. Fresh blood spurted, falling into the brass bowl. Not a sound, not a movement. She stood there, watching her blood flow with a pale smile on her lips. I had witnessed too many deaths in my life to be shocked, yet the fanaticism in their eyes still made me shiver. A few drops of blood splattered outside the circle, hitting the window near my hiding spot. The sweet, metallic scent filled my nostrils, and a burning thirst ignited within me like wildfire. I swallowed hard, trying to suppress my instincts. Not now. The man raised the bowl high, the blood swirling within, reflecting the flickering candlelight. He began chanting in a strange language, sounding like ancient Latin but distorted, twisted in a bizarre way. The others joined in, creating an unsettling, vibrating sound. And then the unimaginable happened. The blood in the bowl began to boil, steaming into a thick, red smoke. The smoke swirled, rising high, forming the shape of a distorted, pained face before dissipating into the air. Wild cheers erupted. The fanatics began to dance around the altar, hands flailing, mouths muttering prayers. The woman still stood there, blood continuing to flow from the deep cut, but she showed no sign of pain. She looked up at the dome, her lips mouthing words no one understood. The scene grew increasingly insane. Blood from the woman's wrist shot higher, stronger, like a geyser spraying everywhere onto the walls, onto the faces of the others, onto the very dome. So much blood could not come from a single human. Something was wrong, completely wrong. I needed to know more before intervening. Around the altar, the cultists began to shed their robes, revealing naked, blood-splattered bodies. They started cutting themselves small cuts on their arms, on their chests, on their faces. Their blood mingled with the woman's blood, forming a widening pool of crimson on the marble floor. "Blood will cleanse sin," the tall man shouted. "Blood will awaken the chosen one, and the world will drown in a sea of blood before its rebirth." Enough. I didn't know what they were trying to summon, but I had seen enough blood magic in 4 centuries to know it never ended well. I leaped from the window, landing in the center of the circle with a dry thud. My sudden appearance froze everyone. The tall man spun around, the knife still clutched tightly in his hand. His gaze met mine, and I saw terror rising within it. "Never seen anyone so happy to bathe in blood," I said, my voice a deep growl like grinding stone. I bared my lips, deliberately exposing my sharp fangs. "But the party ends here." "Who are you?" the man roared, his voice trembling with fear and rage. "Lucian Hawk," I replied, taking slow, deliberate steps toward him. My true name from when I lived was Lucian Hawk, minor nobility from northern France, died in 1605 and reborn as what you see. And I do not appreciate blood magic in my city. He swung the knife at me, but to a vampire's speed, it was no faster than a turtle's crawl. I grabbed his wrist, squeezing until I heard the crack of bone. The knife clattered to the floor. I whispered, leaning close to his ear, my cold breath chilling his skin, "The party is over." I flung him across the room, he slammed into the opposite wall. The others began to scream, scattering in panic. I paid them no mind. My eyes were fixed on the woman still standing motionless by the altar, blood still gushing from the cut. I approached her, taking her bleeding wrist. The cut was deep, to the bone, yet there was no sign of pain on her vacant face. I looked into her eyes, searching for a sign of life, of consciousness. "Can you hear me?" I asked, gently shaking her shoulder. No response, only those empty eyes staring through me, into something distant that didn't exist in this world. "Truly," I muttered, tearing a strip of fabric from my cloak and wrapping it around her wrist to staunch the blood. "What have they done to you?" I turned back to the man, who was trying to crawl up against the wall. He coughed blood, likely from broken ribs. I strode towards him, each step leaving crimson footprints on the blood-stained stone. "You cannot stop it," he croaked, half laughing, half crying. "The ritual has begun, the blood has flowed, the chosen one will awaken." "Who?" I grabbed him by the collar, lifting him into the air. "Who is the chosen one?" He only laughed, blood trickling from the corner of his mouth. "You will know, we all will know. When the sky turns red and the seas turn to blood, when cries echo from every corner of the world, you will come, and this world will end." I roared in fury, throwing him back to the floor. But this time he didn't move. I knelt, checking his pulse. None. Perhaps I had thrown him too hard, or maybe his internal injuries were too severe. In any case, I had lost my only source of information. I turned back to the woman, but she had vanished. The back door of the church stood wide open, a trail of blood leading from the altar to the exit. Whether in a trance or not, she had escaped. I stood amidst the desolate church, surrounded by pools of blood and the corpse of a fanatic. The others had fled. The ritual had been interrupted, but I wasn't sure if that was enough to prevent whatever they were trying to accomplish. Moonlight streamed through the broken windows, casting eerie patterns on the blood-soaked floor. I looked up at the dark dome where the blood smoke had risen and formed that distorted, pained face. "Whoever you are," I whispered into the darkness, "I will find you and I will stop you." I left the cathedral, leaving behind a body and countless questions. Seattle's night was still drenched in drizzle, but now the air reeked even more strongly of blood. And deep within me, an ancient fear began to stir. A fear that perhaps, just perhaps, the apocalypse was truly at hand. Part 2, Blood. I could still smell blood on my skin when dawn broke. It had been 300 years since I last slept in a coffin, but the habit of seeking refuge when the sun rose remained. My penthouse apartment in the Pike Place area, overlooking Elliott Bay, was designed with special UV filtering glass. A marvelous invention of the 21st century for creatures like me. No more sleeping in damp catacombs or red velvet-lined coffins. The era of Dracula was long past. Now was the age of adapting vampires. I stood by the window, watching the city bathed in blinding sunlight. I myself stood in a safe shadow, feeling the faint warmth of the sun through the thick glass. My eyes ached, not from the light but from weariness. I needed rest, but the images from last night haunted my mind. "The chosen one," I murmured, taking a sip from the glass in my hand. The dark red liquid within was not wine. "Who is the chosen one?" I took another sip, savoring the sweet metallic taste on my tongue. Animal blood wasn't bad, but it couldn't compare to human blood. Yet, I had forsaken my natural food source for 273 years after killing a young girl in Vienna. She had golden hair and deep blue eyes, and I had ended that life simply because of thirst. Elizabeth Schumann, 22 years old, daughter of a composer. I still remember the scent of lavender in her hair and how she pleaded in trembling German. The next day, I discovered she was a talented pianist, preparing for an important concert. The world had lost a musical genius because of my thirst. I still kept the program from that never-held concert in my drawer, a reminder of the cost of being a monster. That was the last time I drank human blood. I swore to protect humanity, not to hunt them. A vow not easily kept with my nature, but I had upheld it through the ups and downs of history. I set the glass down and walked to an antique oak table in the corner of the room, on which sat an ultra-thin laptop. A device I was still getting used to, despite using this technology for nearly 2 decades. I opened the machine, beginning to search for information on the Apocalyptic Light cult. The internet, another marvelous tool of the era. I had lived through times when information was as precious as gold, where knowledge was hoarded in distant monasteries, guarded by illiterate men. Now, with a few clicks, I could access humanity's treasure trove of knowledge. But information about the Apocalyptic Light cult was limited. A few articles about mysterious disappearances on the West Coast, some rumors on obscure forums, and the few dark web posts I had read before. Nothing new, nothing that could help me understand last night's blood ritual or the chosen one they spoke of. I needed more information, and I knew exactly where to look. As dusk fell, I returned to the abandoned cathedral on Capitol Hill. Seattle's streets bustled with hurried people. No one noticed the shadow gliding through the dark corners. Those who live in the light rarely perceive what lurks in the dark. When I arrived, the cathedral was as silent as I had left it last night. The heavy wooden door creaked faintly as I pushed it open. Inside, dried blood still stained the marble floor, but the body had vanished. Someone had come and cleaned up the traces. I stepped over the bloodstains, careful not to leave footprints. The metallic smell lingered, mingling with the musty odor of the ancient cathedral. A strange scent, like a combination of death and holiness. In the desolate churchyard, signs of the ritual remained. The stone altar with dark red bloodstains, burnt-out candles, and the brass bowl still placed in the center. I picked up the bowl, examining it closely. It was ancient, perhaps medieval, with intricate carvings I didn't recognize. Not Latin, not Greek, nor any other ancient language I knew. I set the bowl down, scanning the vast space. The pews had long been removed, leaving a wide-open area beneath the soaring dome. An eerie feeling enveloped me, as if I were being watched. I inhaled deeply, trying to catch the scent of any other living creature, but there was only the smell of dried blood and dust. A small sound behind the altar caught my attention. In a flash, I was there, swift as a shadow, nothing but a mouse gnawing on a fallen piece of candle wax. It looked at me with beady black eyes, then disappeared into a crack in the wall. I returned to the center of the church, observing more carefully. The blood had dried into strange patterns on the stone floor. I looked closer and realized they weren't random bloodstains. The pools of blood formed a pattern, a symbol of some kind. I stepped back a few paces, trying to see the overall image, a pentagram with a complex symbol in the center. I didn't recognize it, but this was certainly no coincidence. The blood had been carefully arranged, a part of the ritual I had interrupted. I took out my phone to photograph the image for later study. Technology truly was a blessing for creatures like me, those who had to adapt to every new era. As I bent down to examine another mark on the floor, a cold shiver ran down my spine. A sensation I had grown all too familiar with after 4 centuries. The feeling of another presence, not human, I spun around, claws automatically extended, ready to strike. No one was there, yet the feeling didn't dissipate. Something was here, watching me, hidden in the shadows. I took another deep breath, trying to catch a scent, any sign, and then I smelled it. Not human, not animal, but a strange odor like sulfur and rotting lilies mingled with dried blood. "I know you're there," I said into the darkness, my voice echoing under the dome. "Show yourself." No reply, but the scent grew stronger. From the deepest, darkest corner of the church, a black shadow began to move. Not moving like humans or animals move, but slithering, swirling like thick smoke. The shadow grew larger, taller, until it took on the form of a tall man in a robe. "You are not one of us," a voice boomed, deep and ancient like stone grinding on stone. "But you are not human either." "Who I am doesn't matter," I replied, still in a defensive stance. "What matters is who you are and what you are doing here." The shadow laughed, a sound like water boiling in a furnace. "I have many names, through many ages and many civilizations, but you may call me the priest." "Priest of what?" I asked, my eyes never leaving the shifting shadow. "Of the apocalyptic light, of course," the priest replied, his voice even as if speaking of the weather. "Of the final judgment day, of the greatest rebirth." "The blood ritual," I said, "the chosen one, explain." The priest moved toward the stone altar, his dark, skeletal hand reaching out, caressing the brass bowl. "You interrupted the first ritual, vampire, but that does not matter. The chosen one has awakened, and no one can stop it." I moved closer, careful with each step. "Who is the chosen one?" "The one who will bring the apocalypse to this world," the priest replied, raising his head to look at the dark dome. "The one who will tear open the veil between worlds, revealing the ultimate truth." "Sounds like religious nonsense," I smirked. "I've lived long enough to hear hundreds of prophecies of the end times, and none of them were true." The priest turned back to me, and though I couldn't see his face beneath the robe, I felt his malicious gaze piercing me. "This time is different, false vampire. This time, the prophecy will come true, and you, who have lived too long, will witness it." I had heard enough. With a vampire's speed, I lunged at the priest, claws extended, ready to tear apart anything in my path. But as my claws reached the black robe, they only tore through air. The priest dissolved like smoke, leaving only his laughter echoing under the dome. "You cannot kill what is already dead, vampire," the voice echoed from all directions. "Wait, the second ritual will take place tomorrow night, where water and land meet, where blood will stain white snow. Come and witness it if you dare." Then the voice vanished, and I was alone again in the empty cathedral. The smell of sulfur and rotting lilies still lingered in the air, but the priest was gone. I stepped back, feeling a chill run down my spine. Not from fear, but from a familiar sensation I had long forgotten. Powerlessness. I could not attack something without a physical form. "Where water and land meet, where blood will stain white snow," I repeated the priest's words. Lake Washington. That was the only place in the city with snow at this time of year, thanks to an unusual cold snap last week. As I walked out of the cathedral, the moon was high, illuminating the empty streets. I looked up at the star-filled sky, wondering if this was the beginning of something grand and terrible or just a cruel twist of fate. 417 years of existence, and I had never believed in destiny. But tonight, walking under the cold moonlight, I felt as if the stars were realigning, as if something ancient and terrible was awakening. I didn't have much time. The second ritual would take place tomorrow night, and I needed to be ready. But first, I needed to learn more about the Apocalyptic Light cult, about the mysterious priest, and about the chosen one they worshipped. And I knew exactly who could help me. Part 3. I had never liked humans, despite spending 2 centuries protecting them. Eliza Blackwood was a rare exception, a professor of ancient religions and occult studies at the University of Washington. Eliza possessed the most impressive collection of ancient books I had ever seen outside the Vatican. We had met 7 years ago when I was searching for information about a cult in Mexico. She had helped me uncover an ancient Mayan ritual that the cult was trying to recreate. Eliza never asked why I was interested in such information or why I could only meet her at night. Sometimes I wondered if she knew what I was. Perhaps she did. During our first meeting, when I accidentally touched her hand and she felt my unusually cold skin, she merely raised an eyebrow, paused for a beat, then continued her lecture on ancient texts without interruption. A few weeks later, I found a book on vampires in her office, open to a page describing how to identify them, but she never directly mentioned it. And neither did I. It was an unspoken agreement between two researchers, I with 4 centuries of supernatural experience, and she with her extensive academic knowledge. Tonight, I stood before her apartment door in the Queen Anne neighborhood, an old building with red brick and tall windows. I knocked 3 times, gently but firmly. "Who is it?" Eliza's voice called from within. "Lucian," I replied, "Lucian Hawk." A moment of silence, then the sound of the lock clicking open. Eliza stood before me, still in her business attire, a white shirt, a black pencil skirt, her dark hair neatly tied back. Her green eyes looked at me with surprise and concern. "Lucian," she said softly, 7 months, no word, you don't look well." I scoffed. "I'm dead, remember. Looking well isn't my strong suit." Eliza didn't smile. She stepped aside, gesturing for me to enter. "What do you need? Not a social call, I'm guessing." "I need information," I said, stepping into the warm apartment. Just as I remembered, the place was crammed with books on shelves, on tables, even stacked on the floor. The scent of old paper and ink mingled with a faint aroma of green tea, about a cult called the Apocalyptic Light. Eliza closed the door, carefully engaging 3 locks. She turned back to me, her face tense. "The Apocalyptic Light. What have you gotten yourself involved with them?" "So you know about them?" I asked, sitting down in the worn armchair by the window, my usual seat during previous visits. "A little," Eliza admitted, walking toward the small kitchen. "Tea?" "No, thank you. You know I can't drink that." "I have animal blood in the fridge," she said, as if mentioning milk or orange juice, "just in case you dropped by." I raised an eyebrow. "You prepared blood for me?" "I always prepare for every possibility," Eliza said with a small smile, opening the refrigerator to retrieve a medical blood bag. "I bought it from a friend at the blood bank. She thinks I'm researching blood disorders." Eliza poured the blood into a glass, warmed it in the microwave, then handed it to me. I took it, feeling the warmth spread through the thin glass. "Thank you," I said, taking a sip. "Animal blood, but good quality. So, the Apocalyptic Light, what do you know about them?" Eliza poured herself a cup of tea, then sat on the chair opposite me. "A relatively new cult, only appearing about 5 years ago, but their origins can be traced back to the medieval era, a secret offshoot of the Crusades. They believe the world needs to end to be reborn, and that they can hasten that process." "How?" I asked, my eyes never leaving Eliza. "By summoning an entity, a creature from beyond the veil, as they call it," Eliza explained, her voice shifting into the professional tone of a professor. "They call this creature the Chosen One. According to their belief, the Chosen One will break the boundaries between worlds, opening a gateway for ancient powers to return." "And how do they summon this creature?" I asked, setting down the glass of blood. "A complex ritual performed in multiple stages," Eliza replied, getting up and walking to a bookshelf, pulling out an ancient, leather-bound book. "I found some old texts describing it. There are 7 stages. Each stage requires a blood ritual at a specific location and a specific time." She opened the book, placing it before me. On the yellowed page was a detailed drawing, a 7-pointed star, each point bearing a different symbol. 7 rituals," Eliza said, pointing to each point of the star. 7 locations, 7 sacrifices, and then the Chosen One will fully awaken." "Sacrifices?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Blood sacrifices," Eliza confirmed. "In each ritual, a willing participant, usually a fervent follower, will offer their blood for the ceremony. But for the final ritual, they need a greater sacrifice, a soul sacrifice." I looked closely at the drawing. The symbol at the first point of the star was a cathedral, the second a lake. "The first ritual took place last night," I said, "at an abandoned cathedral on Capitol Hill. I stopped it." Eliza looked at me with alarm. "How did you stop it?" "I killed one of them," I admitted, "but I think it was too late. The ritual was largely complete before I intervened." And the second ritual? Eliza asked, her voice urgent. Will take place tonight at Lake Washington, I replied. I was informed by something that called itself the priest. Eliza shot up from her seat, her face pale. The priest? You encountered the priest. You know him. He's not a him, Eliza said, her voice trembling. The priest is an entity, a creature that doesn't belong to this world. He is a direct servant of the Chosen One. If the priest has appeared, that means that the Chosen One has awakened, I finished her sentence. But we can still prevent the remaining rituals, can't we? Eliza didn't answer immediately. She flipped through a few pages of the book, stopping at another with ancient text and bizarre drawings. There is a way, she said at last. If we can prevent at least one of the 7 rituals, the awakening process will not be complete. The Chosen One will be weakened, vulnerable, and can be destroyed. Destroyed how? I asked, standing up, feeling a glimmer of hope. By the blood of a creature that is not human, but once was human, Eliza read from the book. The blood of one who is dead, yet still lives. She looked up directly into my eyes. The blood of a vampire, Lucian. I scoffed. So this is why I'm being dragged into this. Not entirely, Eliza said, flipping a few more pages. Vampire blood can destroy the Chosen One, but only while the creature is still weak. If all 7 rituals are completed, nothing can stop it. Not a vampire, not any creature on this earth. I looked at my watch. The sun had set an hour ago. I didn't have much time. I need to get to Lake Washington, I said, walking towards the door. Thank you for the information, Eliza. Wait, Eliza called out, running into her bedroom and returning with something in her hand. A silver knife with ancient characters carved into the blade. Take this. Silver doesn't harm vampires as in stories, but it is effective against creatures like the priest. I found it during an excavation in France last year. I took the knife, feeling its comfortable weight in my hand. You even prepared a silver knife just in case I dropped by. As I said, Eliza smiled, I always prepare for every possibility. Be careful, Lucian. The things you are facing, they are unlike anything you have encountered before. I've lived 417 years, Eliza, I said, tucking the knife into my waistband. I've seen enough horrors in this world. Not this, Eliza said, her voice dropping. Not the Chosen One. That creature doesn't belong to our world. It comes from a place of no light, no time, no death. It is the most ancient horror humanity has ever known. I looked at Eliza, seeing genuine fear in her green eyes. Eliza was not easily frightened. She had spent her life researching horrors, strange creatures, and dark rituals. If she was afraid, perhaps I should be too, but fear was a luxury I couldn't afford. Not now. I'll be back, I said, opening the door. Lock up and don't open for anyone else. Eliza nodded, and I stepped into the hallway, hearing the click of 3 locks behind me. I wasn't sure if 3 locks would be enough to stop the priest, but it was all we had for now. Lake Washington stretched like a giant dark mirror under the moonlight. The eastern shore was covered in a thin layer of snow, cold and still. I stood hidden in the shadows of the trees, observing. At first, there was no sign of activity. Then, in the distance, I saw them. A procession of figures in black robes moved like ghosts across the white snow. They advanced toward the water's edge, where the snow met the dark lake. I counted about 30 people, more than last night. They erected a wooden altar right by the water, on the thin, frozen ice. The brass bowl was placed in the center, along with black candles and a curved knife, the same knife as last night. Then the drums began. Not modern drums, but primitive hide drums echoing like a demonic heartbeat, low and steady. The drumming came from a tall man standing beside the altar, his hands beating a hide-covered drum adorned with bizarre symbols. The time to act was now, before the ritual began. I focused on the ancient power within my body, feeling the supernatural energy flowing through my long-dead veins. For a moment, I was no longer Lucian Hawk, but something more primal, more savage. I launched myself from the shadows, swift as lightning. None of the cultists had time to react. My claws, long and sharp as blades, tore through the flesh of the 2 closest figures. Blood sprayed, staining the white snow beneath their feet crimson. Panicked screams erupted, breaking the steady rhythm of the drums. I spun around, my claws tearing through the robe and flesh of another before I lunged towards the drummer. but he was faster than I expected. He recoiled, still beating the drum with one hand while the other raised a metal cymbal. A blinding flash of light shot from the cymbal, piercing through me like an icy spear. I screamed in agony, falling to the snow, feeling as if I was burning from the inside, as if every drop of blood in my body was on fire. But I was not human. Pain could not defeat me. I stood up, quickly regaining my balance. The drummer was still there, still drumming, still holding up the cymbal. "Vampire," he said, his voice echoing strangely. "We have been waiting for you." "Then you must know what I've come for," I growled, lunging at him once more. This time I didn't attack head-on. I circled around, so fast that the human eye couldn't follow, attacking from behind. My claws plunged into his back, through the robe, through the flesh, reaching his spine. But there was no blood, no cry of pain, only a dry, rattling laugh, and he spun around, face to face with me. Beneath the hood was not a human face. It was a bone-white mask with angular, impassive features, and eyes behind the mask, eyes burning red like embers pierced through me with an ancient hatred. "You cannot stop the inevitable," the voice issued from behind the mask. Not a human voice, but the sound of 1,000 voices merging. "The chosen one has awakened. It is only a matter of time." I took a step back, Eliza's silver knife heavy in my hand. "Then I will kill you before that happens." I swung the knife, the silver blade tracing a gleaming arc in the dark night. The knife plunged into the masked figure's neck, precisely where a human carotid artery would be. This time there was a scream of agony, not a human cry, but the shriek of something ancient and horrifying. The masked figure staggered back, the knife still embedded in its neck. A black, tar-like liquid poured from the wound. "You will pay," it roared, its voice no longer a chorus of 1,000, but a solitary, pained, and furious voice. "You will witness your world collapse, vampire." The other cultists had regrouped, surrounding me, but I didn't care about them. My eyes were fixed on the masked figure trying to pull the knife from its neck. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw something that froze the blood in my veins. A little girl, no older than 12, was bound to a wooden stake near the altar. She wore a white dress, her golden hair cascaded over her shoulders, and her eyes were filled with tears and terror. A sacrifice. There was no more time to confront the masked figure. I had to save the girl before it was too late. I charged through the crowd, my claws sweeping aside those who blocked my path. Blood spattered, cries of pain echoed, but I didn't stop. I went straight to the wooden stake where the little girl trembled in her thin dress. "Don't be afraid," I said as I reached her, my claws slicing through the ropes. "I'll get you out of here." The girl looked at me, her eyes wide, not with fear but with astonishment. "It's you," she whispered, "the one they said would come." "What?" I asked, but there was no time for an answer. A terrifying roar erupted from behind, and I turned to see the masked figure charging at us. The silver knife was still in its neck, the black liquid gushing like a stream. I scooped up the girl, turned, and ran. Faster than any human could, faster than the wind, I flew across the snow-covered lake shore towards the distant forest. The furious roar echoed behind us, but gradually faded, until only the wind whistling through the leaves and the girl's ragged breathing in my arms remained. I stopped when we were far enough, setting the girl down at the base of a tree. She was trembling, not from fear, but from cold. I took off my cloak and wrapped it around her. "What's your name?" I asked, kneeling to her eye level. "Mara," she replied, her voice soft. "My name is Mara." "Mara," I repeated, trying to smile without revealing my fangs. "Do you know who those people were? Why did they capture you?" Mara shook her head, her golden hair swaying. I noticed her eyes were an unusually bright blue, almost luminous in the dark, not quite human eyes. "I don't know. They took me when I was walking home from school. They said I was special, that I would help them open the gate." She spoke these words with surprising calm for a child who had just escaped being sacrificed. No trembling, no tears, no panic, just a strange, almost calculating composure. "The gate?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "What gate?" "I don't know," Mara said, her eyes cast down, but I caught a flicker of something, a quick, assessing glance, not of a frightened child, but of someone observing my reaction. "They kept talking about someone who would come through the gate, the chosen one." I looked at the girl before me, trying to understand why the cult would choose her as a sacrifice. Was it because she was special in some way, or simply because she was innocent and easily abducted. "Mara, do you have a home?" I asked. "Where are your parents?" "I live at the An Duong orphanage," Mara replied, her eyes still downcast. "In the south of the city." "An Duong?" I frowned. That name evokes something. "How long have you lived there?" "Since I was very small," Mara replied, her voice growing distant. "I don't remember my parents. Who runs that orphanage?" "Mr. Orpheus," she replied, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. "He's very kind to us. He says we are special children." Orpheus? An ancient name evoking Greek mythology, the man who descended into the underworld to bring his love back. But this name, appearing in the current context, combined with blood rituals and gates, carried a far more ominous meaning. An orphanage. Of course, a child no one would look for, no one would remember. But not just that. Perhaps a supply source for willing participants in the rituals. A terrifying thought began to form in my mind. "I'll take you back there," I said, standing up. "But first, I need to know more about the people who captured you. Did they say anything else? Anything you can remember?" Mara thought for a moment, then nodded. "They talked about a place of fire and light. They called it Las Vegas. They said the next ritual would be there." Las Vegas? The third ritual. I needed to stop it. But first, I had to ensure Mara's safety. "All right, Mara," I said, offering her my hand. "Let's go, I'll take you home." She took my hand, and we began to walk through the dark forest, towards the distant city lights. I felt her small, warm hand in mine, the hand of life, of humanity that I had sworn to protect. But as I looked back towards Lake Washington, I saw a glowing red spot in the darkness. Blood on the snow, the blood of those I had killed and my own, mingled into a crimson pool under the cold moonlight. "Black blood is sometimes scarier than cold bodies," I muttered, journaling in my mind, a habit from centuries of solitude. And tonight, too much blood has flowed. But I knew this was only the beginning. The real battle still lay ahead, and I wasn't sure if I had the strength to confront what was awakening. The Chosen One, a creature from beyond the veil, an ancient horror humanity had never known. And somehow, I, an old, weary vampire, was the only one who could stop it. Part 4, Las Vegas Never Sleeps. A city of light in the dark desert, of laughter amidst despair, of dreams amidst nightmares. I had hated this place since it was built. Too much light, too much noise, too many empty souls. But tonight, I came here not to gamble or see a show. I came to stop the third ritual. After taking Mara back to the An Duong orphanage, where I had to use a bit of my hypnotic ability to convince the manager that she had merely run off to play, I flew straight to Las Vegas on a night flight. A first-class ticket, a bag of blood hidden in my luggage, and I was ready for the next confrontation. I still couldn't shake the strange feeling I had when I met Mara. Something was off about her, too calm, too self-possessed for a child who had just escaped sacrifice. And especially the name Orpheus, the orphanage director's name, coincidentally shared with an ancient entity, could not be a mere happenstance. But when I tried to delve deeper into Mara's mind with hypnosis, I encountered a wall, something that had never happened with any human in 400 years. I tried to find out more about the An Duong orphanage, but online information was very limited, just a simple website with basic information and a few faded photos. No photos of Mr. Orpheus. I had left a letter with Eliza, asking her to investigate the orphanage further. While I was on my way to Las Vegas, Eliza had sent me more information via text. According to what she found in ancient texts, the third ritual would take place in a place where fire meets darkness, where sin is celebrated as virtue. No location fit that description better than Las Vegas. But Las Vegas was a large city with countless casinos, hotels, and nightclubs. How was I to find the exact location of the ritual? The answer came from an unexpected source. As I walked along the Las Vegas Strip, observing the crowds, a newsboy standing on a street corner called out to me. "Hey, mister," he said, his voice raspy. "You look like you're looking for something." I stopped, looking at the boy, about 13 or 14, with a gaunt face and eyes far older than his years. Nothing special, except, "You don't have a shadow," I said, observing where the neon lights illuminated the pavement. Everyone had a shadow, except this boy. "You're quick to notice," the boy smiled, not at all surprised by my observation. "Not everyone sees the obvious." Who are you? I asked on high alert. Or rather, what are you? An observer, the boy replied, shrugging. A messenger, a guide if you wish to call me that. And where do you wish to guide me? To where you need to go, the boy said, his eyes sparkling with neon light. The third ritual, the Apocalyptic Light, the chosen one, that's what you're looking for, isn't it? I didn't answer, but the boy didn't seem to need one. He simply smiled, turned, and began to walk along the sidewalk, waving for me to follow. I followed the boy through crowded streets, past glittering casinos and noisy nightclubs. We left the strip, turning onto smaller, darker streets until we reached an old, run-down part of the city, where buildings were dilapidated and neon signs no longer shone brightly. The boy stopped in front of a large, grimy building with no sign. From the outside, it looked like an abandoned warehouse or an old industrial facility. What is this? I asked. An old bomb shelter, the boy replied. Built during the Cold War when people feared a nuclear attack. Now it's forgotten, like many other things from that era. And the ritual will take place here, I asked, observing the building with skeptical eyes. Down there, the boy pointed to the ground, in the bomb shelter where the darkness is thickest, where fire meets darkness. Why are you helping me? I asked, turning back to the boy. What is your role in this game? The boy smiled, a sad, ancient smile. I am just an observer, as I said. I don't take sides, but I do enjoy watching things unfold. Fair enough, I repeated, feeling a bitter smile touch my lips. What is fair about stopping the apocalypse? Who says it's an apocalypse? The boy asked, his eyes gleaming. Perhaps it's just a new beginning. Before I could ask more, the boy vanished. Not walking away, not running, but actually disappearing as if he had never existed. I stood alone before the gray building, feeling a shiver knot from cold. Whoever the boy was, I had no choice but to trust his information. I moved toward the building, searching for an entrance. A heavy iron door at the back of the building led down a dark staircase. I opened the door easily, the lock had been broken beforehand, and I began to descend the cold concrete steps. The deeper I went, the more suffocating and damp the air became, carrying a strange scent. The smell of sulfur, of rotting lilies, and of blood. The scent I had smelled in the abandoned cathedral in Seattle. The scent of the priest. At the bottom of the stairs was a long, dark corridor, lit only by sparse candles placed on the floor. I moved in the darkness, making no sound, following the direction of the candles and the scent. The corridor led to another door, larger and made of thick steel. From behind the door, I heard music, not drums like at Lake Washington, but low, haunting choral singing, like a distorted hymn. I pressed my ear to the door, listening. Many voices, perhaps dozens, were singing a strange melody in a language I didn't recognize. Not Latin, not Greek, not any ancient language I knew. It was something older, stranger, as if not made for human throats. I cautiously opened the door just wide enough to peer inside. The sight that greeted me froze me. A vast, circular space, like a giant underground arena. The soaring concrete walls were adorned with bizarre symbols painted in blood. In the center was a large pit in which a fire blazed. Not ordinary red fire, but a strange, blue flame, casting an eerie light over the entire space. Around the fire pit, dozens of figures in black robes stood in a circle, hands raised, mouths chanting the grotesque hymn. And at the edge of the fire pit, a familiar figure, the masked one I had confronted at Lake Washington. The wound on its neck was healed, no trace of the silver knife I had plunged into it. But what truly horrified me were the objects next to the fire pit. Cages at least a dozen, and in each cage, a human, men, women, even children. They huddled in fear. Some were crying, some were praying, some had fallen unconscious. The sacrifices. I had no time to plan, no time to think. I had to act immediately. I shoved the door open wide, stepping into the arena with a vampire's speed. My sudden appearance stopped the hymn. All the cultists turned to look. You again, the masked figure said, its voice echoing through the space. Vampire, you are persistent. I've come to end this, I said, walking step by step into the arena. Release those people, and I might just let you live. Laughter erupted from behind the mask, a distorted sound unlike human laughter. You don't understand, do you? You cannot stop this. You cannot stop the chosen one. We'll see, I growled and lunged towards the masked figure. But this time it was ready. It raised its hand, and an invisible surge of energy struck me, throwing me backward. I slammed into the concrete wall, feeling my ribs crack, but I was a vampire. Broken bones would heal. I rose, staggering but maintaining my fighting stance. The cultists began to move towards me, forming a tightening circle. "I know what you are," I said to the masked figure. "You are the priest. You don't belong to this world." "Clever," the priest said, clapping his hands mockingly. "But that won't save you, vampire. It won't save any of you." He turned towards the cages, waving his hand. The door of one cage opened, and a middle-aged man was pulled out by an invisible force. He resisted, trying to cling to the bars of the cage, but it was useless. He was dragged to the edge of the fire pit where the priest stood. "Look," the priest said, grabbing the man's neck. "Look at the weakness of humanity. They fear death, but death is the most precious gift we can bestow." "I don't know who you are," the man gasped, tears streaming down his face. "But please, I have a family, children." "And they will see you again," the priest said, his voice suddenly soft, almost tender, "in the new world, in the great rebirth." Then, before I could move, the priest pushed the man into the fire pit. A blood-curdling scream erupted, but only for a moment. The blue flame flared, consuming the man, leaving no trace, no ash, no bones, nothing, as if he had never existed. "No," I roared, lunging forward through the circle of cultists. I no longer thought of self-preservation. I just wanted to stop this, to stop the next senseless deaths. I crashed into the priest, knocking him to the floor. His mask flew off, and I saw nothing beneath, no face, no flesh, no bones, only a black void, like a piece of absolute nothingness. In that horrifying moment, I felt a sharp pain in my back. I spun around to see one of the cultists had stabbed me with a ritual knife. Blood. Black vampire blood began to seep from the wound, but the pain only intensified my rage. I swung my hand, my claws tearing through the throat of the one who stabbed me. Blood spurted, staining the arena floor. The priest had gotten up, replacing his mask. "You truly think you can defeat me?" he sneered. "I have existed since before this world was formed. I have witnessed countless civilizations born and die. What are you, a young vampire, compared to me?" "Perhaps nothing," I growled, blood still flowing from the wound in my back. "But I will not let you kill another person." I lunged towards the cages, my claws tearing at the metal, ripping open the cage doors. "Run!" I shouted to the trapped people. "Run up the stairs, get out of here." Some began to run, but many were too terrified to move, and the cultists were moving to block their escape. I turned back to face the priest, feeling my ancient power surge. I was no longer Lucian Hawk, the elegant man with tailored suits and a fondness for art. I was a creature of darkness, a predator, a vampire with power far beyond human. "You are burning your soul," I roared, my cry echoing through the arena. The priest only laughed. "I have no soul to burn, vampire, and what about you? Do you have a soul, you who are dead yet still live?" I didn't answer. Instead, I launched into a final, desperate attack. I knew I couldn't win, but at least I could save those innocent people. But as I was charging towards the priest, something blocked my path. Not a cultist, not a physical barrier, but a person. Mara. The little girl stood between me and the priest, her face no longer showing the fear I saw when I rescued her at Lake Washington. Instead, there was a strange, almost cruel smile. "Mara," I asked, not understanding how she was here. "Run, it's dangerous." "No, Lucian," she said, her voice no longer a child's. "I don't think so." And then, before I could react, Mara pulled a knife from beneath her dress and plunged it straight into my chest, directly into my heart. The knife was not ordinary steel. It was black with a bluish sheen, carved with ancient symbols I had never seen. It was obsidian, the most ancient volcanic glass, material used in sacrificial rituals by pre-Columbian civilizations. But this knife was shaped with a technique not of this world. Excruciating pain spread through my body, not from the wound I had been stabbed many times in the past 4 centuries, but from the betrayal. Mara, the child I had saved, the child I had protected, was the one who stabbed me. I fell to the floor, blood gushing from the wound in my chest. Mara stood over me, the knife still clutched tightly in her hand, her eyes gleaming with a light that did not belong to a child. "Why?" I asked, my voice weak. "Don't you understand?" Mara smiled, her voice still a child's, but with a strange, ancient wisdom. I am a child of Orpheus. I was raised to kill you. Orpheus, I repeated, trying to comprehend what was happening. Who is Orpheus? The most ancient god, the priest said, stepping to Myra's side. The one who existed before creation, before the gods, before time and space. The one who created all and will destroy all. The chosen one. I looked at Mara more closely, and for the first time I saw the truth clearly. Her eyes, deep blue like the sea, were not human eyes. They were too ancient, too old, eyes that had witnessed the beginning of all things. You're not human, I whispered, and she smiled. Not entirely. I am a shard of Orpheus, a fragment of him in mortal flesh. I have lived in many bodies over millennia, always waiting for the opportune moment. The moment when a vampire old enough, strong enough, would appear to open the gate. I tried to stand, but the knife still embedded in my heart paralyzed my strength. Not an ordinary knife. It was made of a strange material, emitting a blue light, just like the fire in the pit. You did exactly what we wanted, Lucian, Myra said, her voice almost tender. You saved me. You took me out of the second ritual, but that's exactly what needed to happen. I needed to be protected so I could complete the third ritual. And now, the priest said, with the blood of the vampire, with the souls of the sacrifices, the chosen one will fully awaken. He turned toward the fire pit, raising his hands high. Orpheus, Lord of the Void, we bring you the blood of the half-human, half-demon, the souls of the willing. Awaken and rebirth this world in your image. The blue flame in the pit flared violently, rising to the very dome of the arena. The light was blinding, painfully so, forcing me to close my eyes. When I opened them, the fire had changed shape, forming a swirling column of flame. And within it, a shape was gradually emerging. A colossal creature, unlike anything I had ever seen. Not human, not animal, not any creature I knew. It had a vaguely humanoid shape, but distorted, with too many limbs, too many eyes, all glowing with an eerie blue fire. Orpheus, the chosen one. The ancient god the Apocalyptic Light cult had been trying to summon, and they had succeeded. I lay there, helpless, the knife still in my heart, watching the terrifying creature slowly emerge from the flame. The cultists began to prostrate themselves, worshipping, while those trapped in cages screamed in horror. But as the creature was almost fully emerged, as it was about to step out of the fire, I felt something stir within me. Not pain, not despair, but something older, stronger. The power of blood. The ancient power I had hidden, had suppressed for 4 centuries. No, I whispered, then louder, no. I reached out, grabbing the knife's hilt, and with a final effort I pulled it from my heart. Blood, black vampire blood, gushed like a stream, but instead of weakening me, it seemed to empower me. I stood up, blood still pouring from the wound in my chest, from the wound in my back. But I no longer felt pain. I felt powerful, stronger than ever. The blood curse, I whispered, recalling an ancient ritual I had learned from my maker, an old vampire in Romania. A ritual that demanded a price in memories, a piece of one's humanity. I closed my eyes, searching my mind for a precious memory. The memory of my mother, of her smile, of her laughter, of the warmth of her hand on my forehead. The last sweet memory from my human life. I offer this memory, I whispered, feeling it slowly dissipate, in exchange for the power of blood and bone. And then the memory vanished. I no longer remembered my mother's face, no longer remembered her voice, no longer remembered the feeling of her embrace. All that remained was a black void, and in that void, a new power was rising. The blood from my wounds began to move according to my will, forming streams, shapes, weapons. It gushed more and more than any creature could contain, flooding the arena floor, swirling around the panicked cultists. I say the boundary between life and death is but a blink of an eye, I roared, insane laughter erupting from my throat. My blood, vampire blood, blazed not with ordinary fire, but with a strange black flame. It engulfed the cultists, incinerating them, turning them to dust in an instant. The priest recoiled, showing fear for the first time. Impossible, the blood curse was forgotten thousands of years ago. Not by me, I laughed, blood still gushing, still burning, still incinerating. I have lived 417 years, and I have learned many things. Myra, or whatever lurked in her form, also recoiled, her face contorted in horror. You cannot stop this. Orpheus has awakened. Perhaps not, I said, my blood blazing stronger higher, engulfing the entire arena. but I can ensure he has no one to serve him. My burning black blood surged towards the priest, towards Mara, towards the colossal creature struggling to escape the blue flame. It engulfed all, incinerated all, annihilated all. Blood-curdling screams erupted from all sides, from the burning cultists, from the struggling priest, from the cowering Mara, and from the colossal creature roaring in the flames. And then only silence, silence and darkness. I fell to the floor, exhausted, the blood having stopped flowing from my wounds. The blood curse had drained me, not just physically, but mentally. I had lost my most precious memory, and with it, a part of my humanity. I lay there in the arena, filled with ash and burnt blood, looking up at the dark dome. In the distance, I heard whimpering. The people trapped in the cages were still alive, still afraid. I struggled to my feet, staggering to the cages. With what remained of my strength, I ripped open the cage doors, freeing them. "Run," I said, my voice hoarse. "Run and don't look back." They ran. No one dared to look at me, no one dared to thank me, and I didn't blame them. I had seen my face reflected in a pool of blood, the face of a monster with no trace of humanity left. When the last person had left, I turned back to the arena. No trace of the priest, of Mara, or of the colossal creature. Only ash and burnt black blood, but I knew this was not the end. They might have vanished, but they were not destroyed. And Orpheus, the chosen one, was still somewhere, still waiting, still hungry. I staggered out of the arena, up the stairs, and out of the grimy building. Outside, the Las Vegas sky was still filled with stars, still glittering with neon lights. No one knew that the apocalypse had almost arrived, that an ancient god had almost awakened. And I, Lucian Hawk, the 417-year-old vampire, had paid the price of my most precious memory to stop it. But would it be enough? Would I have enough strength to face what was to come? I didn't know. I only knew that I needed to return to Seattle, needed to find Eliza, needed to learn more about Orpheus, about the chosen one, before it was too late. Part 5. Vampiric recovery was always a marvel. Broken bones knitted themselves, torn flesh healed, and even mortal wounds like a knife piercing the heart could be overcome. But it required blood, lots of blood. I lay in the bathtub of my Seattle penthouse apartment, immersed in the dark red liquid. Not human blood, I still held to my vow, despite the betrayal, despite the loss of my most precious memory. This was animal blood, collected from slaughterhouses and veterinary blood banks through my connections. Not as delicious as human blood, but enough to heal. The wound in my chest, where Mara's knife had struck, still ached, not from the physical injury, but because that knife was no ordinary weapon. It was made to kill vampires, to harm creatures like me at the deepest level, and it had partially succeeded. I closed my eyes, trying to recall my mother's face, but there was nothing. Only a black void, a hole in my memory. That was the price of the blood curse. A precious memory for destructive power. A fair trade? I didn't know, but it had saved my life and perhaps this world. The doorbell rang, pulling me from my thoughts. I stepped out of the tub, blood dripping onto the marble floor. I quickly dried myself with a towel, threw on a bathrobe, and went to the door. Through the peephole, I saw Eliza standing there, her face tense and worried. I opened the door, and she immediately stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "Lucian," she said, her voice urgent. "I've been trying to reach you for 3 days. Where have you been?" "Las Vegas," I replied, closing the door. "The third ritual." "And?" Eliza asked, her eyes wide with hope. "I stopped it," I said, walking towards the armchair, but at no small cost. Eliza observed me, noticing the blood-stained bathrobe. "You're injured." "Not just that," I sighed. "I used the blood curse." Eliza's eyes widened further, this time with fear. "The blood curse, but it demands a memory." "My mother's memory," I said, my voice empty. "My last memory from my human life." Eliza sat down opposite me, her face filled with pity. "I'm so sorry." "Don't be," I shook my head. "It was my choice and it stopped Orpheus, at least temporarily." "Orpheus?" Eliza asked, her eyes lighting up with academic curiosity. "So that's the name of the chosen one. I've never heard of this god in any mythology." "Because he doesn't belong to any mythology," I said. "He comes from somewhere else, a place of no light, no time, no death." I recounted to Eliza what had happened in Las Vegas about the bomb shelter, about the priest, about Mara, and about the colossal creature trying to escape the blue flame. Mara, Eliza interrupted, the girl you rescued at Lake Washington. Yes, I nodded, feeling the sting of betrayal rise again. That girl wasn't human, or at least she isn't human anymore. She said she was a child of Orpheus, raised to kill me. A tool, Eliza murmured, thinking. A living weapon. That explains why they let you rescue her at Lake Washington. It was part of the plan. But why me? I asked, feeling weary. Why did Orpheus specifically need my blood? Not your blood specifically, Eliza said, standing up and walking to the window, but the blood of a vampire. A creature half human, half demon, a bridge between the world of the living and the dead. She turned back to me, her face serious. You know, some scholars believe that vampires aren't the result of a curse or a supernatural virus. They believe vampires are the product of an ancient experiment, an attempt by ancient gods to create a species that could survive the apocalypse. And you think Orpheus is one of those gods? I asked, raising an eyebrow. No, Eliza shook her head. I think Orpheus is what those gods feared, what they prepared for the apocalypse. Vampires may have been created as a weapon against Orpheus. But over time, that purpose was forgotten, and now, Orpheus wants to use that very weapon to open the gate to our world. I frowned, trying to understand. Are you saying that by using the blood curse, I unwittingly helped Orpheus? Possibly, Eliza said, her voice filled with worry. Vampire blood, especially blood released through an ancient ritual like the blood curse, possesses tremendous power. It could be a catalyst for anything. I stood up, feeling anger surge within me. So you mean I should have let myself die so Orpheus could fully awaken? No, Lucian, Eliza shook her head. I don't know the answer. I only know that we are facing something beyond our comprehension, and we need to find a way to stop it before it's too late. I sighed, feeling the anger dissipate, leaving only weariness. How? I used the blood curse, the strongest thing I know, and it was only enough to temporarily repel Orpheus. How can we stop a god? With another god, Eliza said, her voice dropping, or at least with the power of a god. She turned back to her table, taking an ancient book from her bag, a different one from the one she had shown me before. This book was smaller, older, bound in a type of leather I didn't recognize. I found this in my private collection, Eliza said, placing the book carefully on the table. It speaks of an entity called the Enlightener, an ancient being, as powerful as Orpheus but his opposite. If Orpheus is the void, destruction, then the Enlightener is creation, life. And you think this Enlightener can help us? I asked skeptically. Not directly, Eliza admitted. According to this book, the Enlightener vanished long ago, perhaps dead or having left this world. But the Enlightener's power still exists in an artifact called the Heart of Enlightenment. And where is this artifact? I asked, feeling a glimmer of hope. That's the problem, Eliza sighed. The book isn't specific. It only mentions where light meets darkness, where the peak meets the abyss. A rather vague clue. Where light meets darkness, where the peak meets the abyss, I repeated, thinking. Sounds like a mountain, doesn't it? The place closest to the sun, but also with deep abysses. Possibly, Eliza nodded. But which mountain? There are thousands of mountains in the world. I closed my eyes, trying to think. Where light meets darkness, where the peak meets the abyss. A mountain, for sure, but not an ordinary mountain. A special mountain, a mountain with meaning. And then another memory surfaced. Not the memory of my mother that was lost forever, but another memory from centuries ago. Ararat, I whispered, opening my eyes. Mount Ararat in Turkey, Eliza asked, surprised. Why Ararat? Because it's where the Bible says Noah's Ark landed after the Great Flood, I explained. The place where humanity started anew after a cataclysm, where the light of hope met the darkness of despair, where the peak of life met the abyss of death. Eliza looked at me, her eyes lighting up with understanding. That makes sense, Lucian. Ararat isn't just a physical mountain, it's also a religious symbol, a symbol of rebirth. So the Heart of Enlightenment could be there. I'll go to Mount Ararat, I said, standing up, but how can we be sure? We can't, Eliza admitted, but it's the only clue we have and time is running out. Why do you say that? Because of this, Eliza said, taking a newspaper from her bag. The front page featured an image of a major earthquake in South America with the headline, "Natural Disaster or Sign of the End Times." This earthquake, Eliza pointed to the article, is just the beginning. According to the ancient texts I've studied, when Orpheus awakens, the world will begin to react. Earthquakes, volcanoes, tsunamis all are signs of imbalance, of the boundaries between worlds weakening. So Orpheus has awakened, I said, feeling a chill run down my spine, even though I stopped the third ritual. Not completely, Eliza shook her head. I think he's only partially awakened. If all 7 rituals had been completed, the consequences would be far worse. I looked out the window, watching the city of Seattle, ablaze with lights under the night sky. A city full of life, full of people oblivious to ancient creatures and mystical rituals, people I had sworn to protect. I'll go to Mount Ararat, I decided, turning back to Eliza. I'll find the Heart of Enlightenment, and I will use it to stop Orpheus. You can't go alone, Lucian, Eliza said, her voice filled with worry. This isn't your fight alone. It's precisely my fight, I said, my voice hardening. Orpheus wants my blood. Mara betrayed me because of him. I lost my most precious memory because of him. This is personal. And if you fail, Eliza asked, if you don't find the Heart of Enlightenment, or if it doesn't exist, if Orpheus finds you first. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I walked to the refrigerator, took out a bag of blood, and drank it all in one gulp. Power flowed through my veins, soothing the ache from the wound in my chest. Then I will fight, I said at last, throwing the empty blood bag into the trash. I will fight until my last breath, until my last drop of blood. That's all I can do. Eliza looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. I know I can't stop you, but at least let me help you prepare. She opened the ancient book, turning to a specific page. This book has a ritual that can enhance your power, make you stronger, faster, more resilient. It's not a permanent solution, but it might help you in your quest for the Heart of Enlightenment. Another ritual, I said skeptically. I've had enough rituals for a lifetime, Eliza. This ritual is different, Eliza said, her voice serious. It doesn't require sacrifice or exchange. It's simply a way to tap into the power already within you, the power of a 417-year-old vampire. I looked at the page, ancient symbols and script, detailed drawings of circles and stars, and in the center, a drawing of a winged creature. Not an angel, not a demon, but something in between. All right, I said at last. I'll try it, but then I have to leave immediately. Time is running out. Eliza nodded and began to prepare for the ritual. My penthouse apartment was transformed. Furniture was moved aside, creating a large empty space in the middle of the room. Eliza had drawn a complex circle on the floor with a white powder she had brought. Bone dust, she said, from an ancient, extinct animal. Around the circle, black candles were placed at specific positions corresponding to the constellations in the night sky. And in the center of the circle was a silver bowl filled with a dark red liquid. My blood, extracted from my wrist with a silver knife. Are you ready? Eliza asked, standing outside the circle, the ancient book open in her hand. I nodded, standing naked in the center of the circle beside the bowl of blood. The wound in my chest where Mara's knife had struck was still fresh, not entirely healed. Begin, I said, my voice echoing in the empty space. Eliza began to read from the book, not in English, not in any modern language, but in an ancient tongue with sounds closer to animal growls than human words. As she read, the candles began to burn brighter higher, their flames shifting from ordinary yellow-orange to a deep red, almost the color of the blood in the silver bowl. I felt something changing in the air. A heaviness, a thickness, as if the air was becoming denser, palpable. And with that change, I felt something shifting within me. An energy was rising, a power awakening. Eliza continued to read, her voice growing louder, more powerful. The bone dust on the floor began to glow, creating a circle of white light around me. The blood in the silver bowl began to boil, steaming, creating a thick red smoke that rose, engulfing me. And then the pain began. Not the pain from the wound in my chest, but a deeper, more primal pain, the pain of transformation. I felt my bones changing, expanding, restructuring. I felt my flesh stretching, tearing, regenerating. I felt my blood, my 417-year-old vampire blood, boiling, burning, transforming. I roared in agony, but the roar was no longer human, not even vampire. It was the roar of something else, something older, stronger. The red smoke completely enveloped me, obscuring my vision. I no longer saw Eliza, no longer saw the apartment, no longer saw anything but red. And in that red, I saw images. I saw a towering mountain covered in white snow, its peak disappearing into the clouds Mount Ararat. I saw a deep cave within the mountain, its walls carved with ancient symbols, symbols similar to those in Eliza's book. I saw a glowing object resting on a stone altar in the center of the cave, the Heart of Enlightenment. And I saw a colossal creature with too many limbs, too many eyes, advancing towards the cave, towards the Heart of Enlightenment. Orpheus. The images vanished along with the red smoke, and I found myself kneeling in the circle, gasping for breath. The wound in my chest had healed completely, leaving no trace. But that wasn't the only change. I felt different, stronger, faster, sharper. I felt as if all my senses had been enhanced tenfold, as if every muscle in my body had been perfected. "Lucian," Eliza called, her voice filled with worry. "Are you all right?" I stood up, feeling a new strength flowing through my veins. "I'm fine," I said, surprised to hear that my voice had also changed deeper, more resonant, almost inhuman. "The ritual succeeded," Eliza said, her eyes wide as she observed me. "You've changed." "I saw Mount Ararat," I said, stepping out of the circle. "I saw the Heart of Enlightenment, and I saw Orpheus on his way to find it." "Then we must hurry," Eliza said, closing the book. "You must get there before Orpheus finds the heart." I nodded, walking to the closet to get clothes. But as I passed the mirror, I stopped, stunned by my reflection. No longer Lucian Hawk, the man with dark hair and green eyes. Instead, I saw a taller, more powerful creature with pale, almost translucent skin, through which black veins could be seen flowing beneath. My eyes were no longer green, but burning red with vertical pupils like a cat's. And from my back, two large, coal-black wings spread out powerfully. "My God," I whispered, touching the mirror as if not believing my eyes. "Not God," Eliza said, her voice dropping. "This is the true form of a vampire, Lucian, the form that most vampires never achieve because they are not old enough, not strong enough. But you have lived 417 years, you have accumulated enough power. The ritual simply released that potential." I turned back to Eliza, feeling a new fear. "What am I?" "You are still Lucian Hawk," she said, stepping closer to me. "Still the vampire who swore to protect humanity. It's just that now you have the power to fulfill that vow." I looked back at my reflection in the mirror, trying to get used to the new form. This was not the kind of creature humans would trust, not the kind of creature humans would feel safe around. This was the stuff of nightmares. But perhaps that was exactly what was needed to face Orpheus, to face a nightmare. Perhaps I needed to become a nightmare. "I will go to Mount Ararat," I said, turning back to Eliza. "I will find the Heart of Enlightenment, and I will stop Orpheus." "I know you will," Eliza said, handing me a small pouch. "Here are some things that might help you: charms, bone dust, and a small book with information about the Heart of Enlightenment that I copied." I took the pouch, feeling grateful. "Thank you, Eliza, for everything." "Don't thank me," she said, her voice full of worry. "Just come back safe. And Lucian, what is it? Remember that no matter what you look like, no matter what you are, you still have your humanity. Don't lose that. It is your strongest weapon." I nodded, feeling a warmth in my chest, not from blood, not from new power, but from friendship, from care. "I will remember," I promised, "and I will return." I stepped out onto the balcony, the city of Seattle, ablaze with lights, stretched out below. I spread my wings, feeling their power, feeling the wind rushing through each black feather. And then, with a powerful thrust, I soared into the night sky, heading east, towards Mount Ararat, towards the final confrontation with Orpheus. The confrontation that might decide the fate of this world. Part 6. Mount Ararat was not a place for a creature like me to seek salvation. The snow-capped peak, the harsh sun reflecting off the snow, created a blinding wall of light for a vampire, even as a vampire with a new form, with black wings and enhanced power. I had rested in dark caves along the mountainside during the day and flew to the summit at night. But even in darkness, Ararat remained a challenge. The thin air, the strong winds, and the sacred aura that enveloped the place. The feeling of holy ground where a creature like me was not welcome. In this new form, I perceived many things that were previously impossible. My wings were not just for flight, they were ultrasensitive radar, sensing the subtlest fluctuations in the air. My new skin, pale, almost translucent, was not just a covering but an organ of perception, sensing the energy currents flowing within the earth, ancient magical currents unknown to humans. And my new eyes, burning red with wide pupils, saw beyond the veil of reality, seeing fragments of other worlds occasionally flash and disappear. This was the true power of a vampire. Not what human literature and cinema often depicted, but something far deeper and more ancient. I wondered why it took me over 4 centuries to discover it. The cave was located near the summit, just as I had seen in my vision, a narrow crack in the cliff face, almost imperceptible if one didn't know exactly where to look. I had flown around the summit for 3 nights, searching every inch of rock before I found it. Inside, the cave opened into a colossal space with stone pillars reaching high like columns supporting the sky. The walls were carved with ancient symbols, glowing faintly with an intrinsic light, as if the stone itself absorbed and reflected the moonlight from outside. And in the center of the cave, on an intricately carved stone altar, was a glowing object, a large, fist-sized sphere, transparent as crystal. Inside, something was moving, spinning, dancing like a living flame. The heart of enlightenment. I approached, wings folded tightly behind my back, eyes squinting against the light emanating from the sphere. It was not ordinary light, not sunlight or artificial light. It was a more primordial, ancient light, like the light that existed before time began. As I neared the altar, the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter, as if reacting to my presence. Not a hostile reaction, not a warning, but a welcome. I stopped before the altar, observing the heart of enlightenment. Now I could see more clearly what was swirling within the transparent sphere. Not a flame, but a thick, luminous liquid, constantly moving, creating ever-changing shapes and patterns. Reaching out my hand, I felt warmth emanating from the sphere. A pleasant warmth, like spring sunlight on skin. A sensation I had long forgotten since becoming a vampire. "Heart of enlightenment," I whispered, my voice echoing in the vast space. "I have found you." A faint vibration from the sphere as if it were responding to my voice. The liquid inside spun faster, brighter, and a soft sound like distant bells chimed. I reached out, preparing to touch the sphere, but then stopped. What had Eliza said about the heart of enlightenment? It contained the power of a god, the power of the enlightener, Orpheus's opposite, the power of creation, of life. Could a creature like me, a creature of darkness, of death, touch such a thing without harm? But I had no other choice. Orpheus was coming. I could feel his presence. A dark, cold presence drawing closer with every second. I had to get the heart of enlightenment before he arrived. I took a deep breath, a meaningless habit for a creature that didn't need to breathe, and reached out to grasp the sphere. Pain, horrible pain, as if every cell in my body was burning, tearing apart, regenerating. I roared, the cry echoing through the cave, shaking the colossal stone pillars, but I didn't let go. I clutched the heart of enlightenment tightly, feeling its power flow into my body, merging with my vampiric strength, forming something new, something that had never existed before. Light flared from the sphere, so blinding that I had to close my eyes. It enveloped me, pierced through me, transformed me. I felt my black wings expand, grow stronger, and from them, rays of light began to emanate, not pure white light, but a silver-gray light, a combination of light and darkness. And then, as suddenly as it began, the pain and light vanished. I opened my eyes, seeing myself still standing before the altar, the heart of enlightenment still in my hand, but it had changed. No longer transparent with glowing liquid inside, but a solid, silver-gray sphere with black streaks running through it like veins. And I had changed too. I felt different, not just stronger, not just faster, but something more fundamental. As if a part of my humanity had returned to me, merging with my vampiric nature, forming a new kind of creature. A sound from the cave entrance pulled me from my astonishment. I turned to see a dark shadow moving inward. A shadow larger, darker than any shadow the cave could create. Orpheus. No longer the colossal creature with too many limbs, too many eyes that I had seen in the blue flame in Las Vegas. Now he had a more humanoid form. A tall, gaunt man with pale, almost translucent skin, revealing not veins but black, gaping cracks beneath. His face was featureless, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a blank, flat surface like a mask of human skin. "Vampire," a voice echoed, not from the featureless face but from all directions, from the very air, from the very stone. You found it before me. Orpheus, I replied, clutching the heart of enlightenment tightly in my hand. Or should I call you the chosen one? I have many names, the voice replied, cold and empty as the void. Orpheus, the chosen one, the destroyer, the ender, the shadow. But all are merely labels that you small creatures ascribe to me in a desperate attempt to comprehend that which is beyond your understanding. So what are you? I asked, feeling the power from the heart of enlightenment flow through my veins, ready for the coming battle. I am the end, Orpheus replied, taking slow steps toward me. I am the culmination of all things. I am the absolute void where all life, all time, all space ends. I am anti-creation, the antithesis of creation. And you wish to bring that void to this world, I said, not a question but a statement. Not wish, Lucian, Orpheus said. It is my nature. Like fire burns, like water wets, I bring about the end. It is not malice, it is purpose. And your world, Lucian Hawk, its time has come to an end. It is too old, too weary, too violent. It needs to be released to be reborn in my image. Then my purpose is to stop you, I said, standing tall, my silver-gray wings spread wide behind my back. I am Lucian Hawk, the 417-year-old vampire, and I have sworn to protect this world. Orpheus stopped, his featureless face turned toward me. You do not know what you are facing, vampire. I have existed since before this universe was formed. I will exist after it ends. You, with your minuscule lifespan, cannot comprehend. Perhaps, I admitted, but I know one thing, I will not let you destroy this world. And with that, I lunged towards Orpheus. The heart of enlightenment clutched tightly in my hand, new power flowing through my veins. The battle began. I don't know how long we fought, perhaps minutes, perhaps hours, perhaps days. Time seemed to lose meaning in the colossal cave on Mount Ararat, where a vampire with the power of the Enlightener confronted an ancient god of the void. Orpheus was more powerful than anything I had ever faced. Each of his attacks was like a dark storm tearing through space, shaking the very foundations of reality. Stone pillars crumbled, walls cracked, and the cave trembled as if in an earthquake. But I was no easy opponent either. With the heart of enlightenment in my hand, with new power flowing through my veins, I could counter every one of his attacks. My claws were no longer just physical weapons, but blades of light cutting through the darkness Orpheus created. My wings were no longer just for flight, but to generate powerful gusts of wind, repelling his assaults. And the heart of enlightenment, which I clutched tightly in my hand, emitted silver-gray rays that pierced through the darkness, hurting Orpheus in a way no other weapon could. But I was weakening. Despite my new power, despite the heart of enlightenment, I was still just a vampire, a creature with limits. And Orpheus, he had no limits. He was an ancient god, an entity of absolute void. Every wound I inflicted upon him seemed only to slow him down slightly before he regenerated stronger, darker. I began to understand that I couldn't win, not in the conventional sense. I couldn't destroy Orpheus, couldn't erase him from existence. He was too ancient, too powerful. But perhaps, just perhaps, I could repel him. I could send him back to where he came from, at least for a while. With that thought, I focused all my power into the heart of enlightenment. I felt it grow hot in my hand, brighter, stronger. Orpheus, I roared, my voice echoing in the crumbling cave. Return to where you belong. I raised the heart of enlightenment high, and from it a column of silver-gray light erupted, piercing straight through the cave, through the mountain peak, and up to the sky. The light enveloped Orpheus, making him shriek. A sound not of a human, not of any creature on this earth, but the sound of absolute void and agony. I felt a pulling force, as if a gate was opening, a gate to another place, a place not of this world. And through that gate, Orpheus was being dragged, sucked in, pushed back to where he came from. You cannot win, vampire, Orpheus roared, trying to cling to reality, trying to resist the gate's pull. I will return, I always return. Perhaps, I replied, continuing to focus power into the heart of enlightenment. But not today, not in my era. With a final effort, I pushed more power into the heart of enlightenment, and the gate expanded further, stronger. Orpheus shrieked one last time before being fully sucked into the gate, vanishing from this world. The gate closed with a loud bang, shaking the entire mountain. The cave began to collapse, large rocks falling from the ceiling. I had to get out of here immediately. With the heart of enlightenment still clutched tightly in my hand, I burst out of the cave. My silver-gray wings spread wide, and I flew into the night sky. A sky that was now turning silver-gray with strange streaks of light dancing across it, like an aftershock of the battle just fought. I looked down at Mount Ararat, seeing the summit crumbling, the cave completely gone, and a large crack spreading across the mountainside. A scar from the battle between a vampire and a god. I flew west towards Seattle home. I needed to return, needed to tell Eliza that I had succeeded, that Orpheus had been repelled, at least temporarily. But as I flew over cities, countries, oceans, I began to realize something was wrong. Below me, the world was changing. Not in the way I expected, not recovery, not peace after the storm, but something else, something darker. Cracks were appearing on the ground, not physical cracks, but cracks in reality. As if the fabric of the world was being torn apart. And from those cracks, something was pouring out. A black, thick liquid, like oil but not oil. It spread across the land, across cities, across fields, transforming everything it touched into something else, something that didn't belong to this world. I flew faster, trying to reach Seattle before it was too late. But as I neared the west coast of America, I saw that the city had changed. Seattle was no longer the city of light and drizzle I knew. It had become an ash city. Buildings still stood, but they were no longer structures of glass and steel. They were now made of a black substance with glowing red cracks running along them like the veins of a colossal creature. And the streets. The streets were filled with things I couldn't recognize as human. Things that were both human and not human, moving with unnatural motions, as if controlled by another will. I landed on the roof of my penthouse apartment, or what used to be my apartment. Now it was just a hollow shell with black walls and a floor covered in ash. I walked through the rooms, searching for any sign of Eliza, of anyone alive, but there was nothing, only ash and silence. I stepped out onto the balcony, looking down at the transformed city. In the distance, I could see Capitol Hill, where the abandoned cathedral stood, where I had first confronted the Apocalyptic Light cult. But now the cathedral was no longer abandoned. It was glowing with a fierce red light, and from it, rays of light were spreading, connecting to other buildings, forming a network of glowing red light that enveloped the entire city. A control center, a heart of the Ash City. I looked down at the heart of enlightenment in my hand. It still glowed, but the light was now weaker, and its color had changed. No longer silver gray, but a dark red, almost the color of blood. And then a voice echoed in my head. Not Orpheus's voice, not the voice of anyone I knew, but a new voice, both familiar and alien. "This is not what you expected, is it, Lucian Hawk?" the voice asked, full of irony. "Who's there?" I asked, spinning around, searching for the source of the voice. "Don't you recognize me?" the voice replied, and from the shadows, a figure stepped out. A young girl, perhaps 15 or 16, with golden hair and deep blue eyes. But those eyes were no longer innocent as when I first met her. They were now burning red with vertical pupils, like a cat's or a snake's. "Mara," I whispered, recognizing the girl I had saved at Lake Washington, the girl who had betrayed me in Las Vegas. "Yes, Lucian," Mara smiled, a smile that didn't reach her burning red eyes. "Or perhaps you should call me the Queen of Darkness now. That's what the others call me." "The others?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "How many survived?" "Oh, many," Mara replied, walking around the balcony with light, graceful steps. "Millions worldwide, but they are no longer human, not in the way you understand. They are something else, something better." "What happened?" I asked, clutching the heart of enlightenment. "I repelled Orpheus. I sent him back to where he came from." "Yes," Mara nodded, her red eyes staring at me. "And that's exactly what we wanted you to do." "What?" I asked, not understanding. "Did you think Orpheus truly wanted to come to this world?" Mara sneered. "Did you think such an ancient god could be defeated by a vampire, even a vampire with the heart of enlightenment? No, Lucian, this was the plan from the beginning. Orpheus needed a gate. A bigger, stronger gate than anything the Apocalyptic Light cult could create, and you opened that gate for him." "No," I shook my head, refusing to believe what Mara was saying. "I pushed Orpheus back. I closed the gate." "You opened it, Lucian," Mara affirmed, her gaze unwavering. "When you used the heart of enlightenment, when you created that column of light piercing the sky, you created a crack in reality. a crack large enough for Orpheus not only to pass through, but to bring his entire world with him. I looked down at the Heart of Enlightenment, now glowing with a red light. So this isn't the Heart of Enlightenment. Oh, it is exactly the Heart of Enlightenment, Mara nodded. But not in the way you think. The Enlightener is not Orpheus's opposite. They are two sides of the same coin. Light and darkness, creation and destruction, two forces that balance the universe. And when you used the Heart of Enlightenment to attack Orpheus, you broke that balance. I staggered, feeling as if the ground was crumbling beneath me. What have I done? You have helped us, Lucian, Mara smiled, stepping closer to me. You opened the gate for Orpheus for his world, and now that world is slowly but surely replacing this world. A slow but inevitable process. In a few months, the entire Earth will be transformed. No, I shook my head, refusing to accept it. There must be a way to reverse this. There must be a way to close the gate. It's too late, Mara said, her voice almost pitying. The process has begun, and it cannot be reversed. The world you knew has ended, Lucian. Accept it. I looked down at the ash city below, at the creatures both human and not human moving in the streets, at the black buildings with glowing red cracks. This was the world I had created. This was the apocalypse I had brought about. Did I save the world, or sow the apocalypse? I wondered, my voice empty. Both, Mara replied, stepping to my side. You ended one world and began a new one. A better world, a stronger world. A world in which creatures like us, creatures of darkness, will dominate. I looked at Mara, seeing the honesty in her red eyes. She truly believed what she was saying. She truly believed that this new world, this world of ash and darkness, was a better world. Rain began to fall, not water, but a black, thick liquid, like oil but not oil. It fell on my skin, and instead of causing pain, it brought a strange sensation, almost like warmth. I looked up at the red sky with its black clouds. This was the new world. The world I had unwittingly created. The world I would have to live in with the consequences of my actions. As the black raindrops fell on my face, mingling with tears, I felt a shift within, not despair, not acceptance, but a new resolve. A resolve to find a way to reverse this, to close the gate, to restore the world I had sworn to protect. But as I looked down at my hands, I saw my skin had changed. No longer the pale color of a vampire, but a black substance with glowing red cracks running along it, just like the buildings below. I was changing. I was becoming a part of this new world, and I didn't know if I could fight it. Don't resist, Lucian, Mara said, as if reading my thoughts. Accept it. Accept the new world, accept your role in it. What role? I asked, my voice almost a whisper. As king of the new world, Mara smiled, her red eyes gleaming, alongside its queen. I looked at Mara, at the girl I had saved, the girl who had betrayed me, the girl who was now inviting me to rule a world of ash with her. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt tempted. But then I remembered my vow to protect humanity, to protect this world, a vow I had kept for 417 years. No, I said, my voice hardening. I will not accept this world. I will find a way to reverse it. Mara looked at me, the smile fading from her lips. You have no choice, Lucian. This world already belongs to Orpheus, and so do you. I felt a sharp pain in my head, and another voice echoed. Not Mara's voice, not my voice, but Orpheus's voice, the voice of absolute void. Welcome to the new world, vampire, the voice whispered. My world, your world. I knelt, clutching my head in my hands, trying to fight against the voice, but it was too strong, too overwhelming. It invaded my mind, my soul, my very essence. And when I looked up at the ash city below through my new eyes, red eyes with vertical pupils, I no longer saw it as terrifying. I saw it as beautiful. I stood up, feeling a new strength flowing through my veins, not the strength of a vampire, not the strength of the Heart of Enlightenment, but the strength of Orpheus, the strength of absolute void. I looked at Mara, and this time I smiled a smile that didn't reach my red eyes. I've crossed empty boulevards, hands smeared with resin and bone fragments, I said, my voice changed, deeper, darker. Drizzle falling, soaking old blood. Mara smiled back, a knowing smile. So you've accepted your role. I stopped the apocalypse, I replied, looking down at the ash city, my kingdom. But the apocalypse has only just begun. Part 6, 6 months. 6 months. 6 months since I stood on the balcony in Seattle, looking down at the Ash City and accepting my new fate. 6 months since I became a part of this new world. The world of Orpheus, the world of darkness and void. Many things had changed in those 6 months. Not just the world, not just me, but also the way I perceived everything. I had once feared this new world, had wanted to reverse it, to restore the old world. But now, looking back, I saw those desires as naive, as human. And I was no longer human, not even a vampire. I was something else, something more powerful. We called ourselves the Chosen. The first beings to be transformed in the new world. Beings who carried a part of Orpheus within them. Not many, perhaps only about 100 worldwide. And among them, Mara and I were the strongest, the first. However, sometimes, in rare moments of clarity, I could still feel the old Lucian Hawk, the 417-year-old vampire who had sworn to protect humanity. That voice was faint, distant, but it never completely disappeared. It still whispered in my head, asking if I truly believed in this new world, or if I was merely being controlled by Orpheus. But Orpheus was not a controller. Orpheus was a part of me now, just as I was a part of Orpheus. We were no longer two separate entities, but a new being, a being both human and divine. The king and queen of the new world. Today, we were in South America, in a ruined Inca castle in the Andes. This place was once a historical monument, a tourist attraction. Now, it was one of our power centers, one of the places where the transformation process was most intense. From the top of the castle, I could see the valley below. A valley no longer green with rainforests and clear rivers, but a dark land with twisted trees and rivers the color of dark red blood. Not real blood, but another liquid, something from Orpheus's world, carrying its transformative power. Mara stood beside me, her red eyes looking in the same direction. She was no longer a little girl. In the past 6 months, Mara had changed not only mentally but physically. She now looked like a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, with long golden hair reaching her waist and pale, almost translucent skin, revealing dark red streaks running beneath like rivers of blood. The transformation process in Africa is progressing faster than expected, Mara said, her voice no longer a child's, but a woman's deep and powerful. The Apocalyptic Light branch there has completed the 5th ritual. Good, I nodded, feeling satisfaction spread. The more rituals completed, the more gates opened, the faster the transformation process. But there are still resistors, Mara said, a hint of worry in her voice. Groups of people still trying to fight the transformation, still trying to protect the old world. They will fail, I said, my voice full of confidence. They cannot fight the inevitable. This world already belongs to Orpheus. It is only a matter of time before all accept it or are destroyed. Mara nodded, but I could see a fleeting worry in her red eyes. There's a group in Europe that's becoming quite problematic. They call themselves the Guardians of Light. They've found a way to resist the transformation, at least temporarily. How? I asked, feeling a touch of curiosity. They are using some kind of technology, Mara explained. Something involving wave frequencies and energy. I don't fully understand it, but it seems to be able to create pockets of space where the transformation process cannot penetrate. Interesting, I said, genuinely impressed. Humans always surprised me with their adaptability and creativity. But it's useless. Their technology might create temporary pockets of space, but it cannot stop the global transformation. This world has changed too much, too profoundly. I know, Mara nodded, but they are inspiring others. They are creating hope. And hope is a dangerous thing in our new world. Then we will take away that hope, I said decisively. We will send one of the Chosen to Europe to find this group and destroy them. Who? Mara asked. Most of the Chosen are busy with the transformation process in other regions. I thought for a moment, weighing the options. We had about 100 Chosen, but as Mara said, most were busy, and this mission required someone strong, intelligent, and decisive. I will go, I decided, feeling a thrill rise within me. It had been a long time since I had left this castle, since I had truly participated in the transformation process. I will go to Europe and deal with this group. You, Mara was surprised, but you are the king, you cannot leave here. Why not? I raised an eyebrow. I am not a mortal king bound to a throne. I am Lucian Hawk, one of the first chosen, and sometimes a king needs to go to battle. Mara looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. All right, but I will come with you. No, I shook my head. One of us needs to stay here to coordinate the transformation process. And Europe, that is my territory. I lived there for centuries. I know it like the back of my hand. Mara didn't answer immediately. She walked to my side, placing a hand on my shoulder. Be careful, Lucian. These humans, they are desperate, and a desperate creature can be very dangerous. Even as the Queen of Darkness, there was something about Mara that reminded me of the little girl I had saved at Lake Washington. A tenderness that sometimes gleamed in her red eyes, a fleeting humanity that had not entirely disappeared. Sometimes I wondered how much of her was still human, and how much was Orpheus. I know, I smiled, placing my hand over hers. But I used to be one of them. Remember, I understand them, and that is why I will succeed where others fail. Mara smiled back, but there was a sadness in her red eyes. Sometimes I wonder, Lucian, if you have truly given up your humanity, if a part of you still yearns for the old world, still wishes to protect it. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked into the distance, at the dark valley below, at the red sky with its black clouds, at the new world, Orpheus's world, our world. I swore to protect humanity, I said at last, my voice deep. I kept that vow for 417 years, and in a way, I am still keeping it. We are not destroying humanity, Mara. We are transforming them, upgrading them. We are helping them become something better, stronger. And you believe that? Mara asked, her voice soft, not questioning but curious. I have to believe, I replied, turning back to her. Because if not, then what have I done? What have I become? Mara said nothing more. She only looked at me with an understanding gaze, the gaze of someone who had experienced similar doubts, similar questions. I turned back to the valley, feeling a new restlessness. Europe, my old homeland, where I was born, where I became a vampire, where I began my 417-year journey. And now I was returning there, not as a vampire trying to protect humanity, but as one of the chosen trying to eliminate the last ones still resisting the transformation process. A strange sensation rose within me, not excitement, not anxiety, but something deeper, more ancient. A feeling I couldn't name. A feeling I wasn't sure belonged to Lucian Hawk or to what I had become. 3 days later, I was in Europe, specifically in a small town in the south of France, near the Spanish border. This town was once a popular tourist destination, with ancient buildings and vineyards stretching to the horizon. Now, it was one of the pockets of space Mara had spoken of, a place where the transformation process seemed to be halted, at least temporarily. I stood atop a hill, looking down at the town, feeling a strange discomfort. The air here was different, not the thick, dark air of the new world, but the clear, light air of the old world. The sky was not red with black clouds, but blue with small white clouds. And the ground was not black with glowing red cracks, but brown and green with grass and trees. The old world. The world I had once called home. I could sense the source of this pocket of space. A small tower in the center of the town with a strange device on top, emitting steady energy pulses. The technology the Guardians of Light were using to resist the transformation. I could destroy it from here, with just a ray of energy from my hand. But I didn't. I wanted to meet them first, to understand them, to see their faces when they realized that all their efforts were futile. I walked down the hill towards the town. As I got closer, I could see people moving in the streets, not the distorted creatures of the new world, but humans. Real humans with pink skin and bright eyes. They looked at me with surprise and fear as I entered the town. No surprise, with my black skin and glowing red cracks, with my red eyes and black wings, I was certainly a terrifying sight to them. But I didn't care about their fear. I only cared about the tower, about the device resisting the transformation. As I approached the tower, a group of people stepped out, blocking my path. They wore strange outfits, like armor, but made of a material I didn't recognize. And they carried weapons that emitted a faint blue light. Stop, a tall man, presumably their leader, shouted. You are not permitted here, creature of Orpheus. I stopped, looking at them with curiosity. This man looked familiar, an angular face with dark hair, dark brown eyes that exuded the toughness of a warrior. I had met him somewhere before. Alexander Krauss, I recognized. Professor of special weaponry at the CIA, who invented antimatter-based weapon technology. And you are Lucian Hawk, Kraus narrowed his eyes. I know you from exchanges about supernatural phenomena with Eliza, a vampire. She disclosed it once after Bali whiskey. I didn't believe it until I saw proof of your agelessness in archived photos. You know about Orpheus? I asked, ignoring being exposed. We know many things, the man replied, his voice firm. We know about the transformation, we know about the chosen, and we know how to fight you. Interesting, I said, genuinely impressed. And what are you? The Guardians of Light, the man replied, his eyes full of determination. We are the ones who still believe in this world, the ones who still believe humanity deserves to be saved, that Earth deserves to be protected. Noble, I said, my voice full of irony, but futile. You cannot stop the transformation, you can only delay it. Every day we delay it is a day we can find a way to defeat it, a woman in the group said, her voice full of confidence. And we will find a way, creature, we will save this world. I looked at the woman, feeling a strange familiarity. Something about her green eyes, her firm voice, her unwavering confidence reminded me of Eliza. Eliza, I whispered, startled. The woman frowned, surprised. How do you know my name? I took a step back, feeling a sudden dizziness. Eliza Blackwood, the woman who had helped me find information about the Apocalyptic Light cult, the woman who had helped me find the Heart of Enlightenment, the woman I thought had died in the transformation. Eliza was alive, and not only alive, she was completely untransformed. No dark red cracks on her skin, no burning red eyes. Still the Eliza I knew, with intelligent green eyes and dark hair neatly tied back. You know me? Eliza asked, her voice full of doubt. From where? As I looked closer, I noticed something else about her. A new scar running along her neck, disappearing into her collar, a new tension in her eyes, and a silver pendant with an ancient symbol I recognized. An Akkadian protection, charm against entities from beyond the veil. How did you survive? I asked, ignoring her question. Seattle, the entire city was transformed. Eliza completed my sentence. But not all of us. I was prepared, Lucian. I had studied Orpheus my entire life. I knew what he was and what he could do. I had set up a safe room with protective charms, ancient materials that Orpheus could not penetrate. And when the gate opened, when the transformation began, I took refuge there, along with some others. Eliza looked at me more intently, and I could see a glimmer of recognition in her green eyes. Lucian, she whispered, disbelieving. Lucian Hawk. I nodded, feeling a strange pain in my chest. Not physical pain, but a deeper, more primal ache. Yes, Eliza, that used to be me. Oh my God, Eliza gasped, her hand covering her mouth in horror. What have they done to you? They didn't do anything, I said, my voice hardening again. I chose this. I became one of the chosen. No, Eliza shook her head, refusing to believe. The Lucian I know would never choose this. He swore to protect humanity. He spent 400 years keeping that vow. And I am still keeping it, I said, feeling anger surge. I am helping humanity evolve, become something better, stronger. By turning them into those distorted creatures, Eliza asked, her voice full of indignation. By erasing everything that made them human, that's not protection, Lucian, that's destruction. I didn't answer immediately. Instead, I looked around at the small town with its ancient buildings and people living in fear, at the blue sky and green earth, at the old world, the world I had once called home. And for a moment, just a moment, I felt a flicker, a doubt, a question. Was I doing the right thing? But then Orpheus's voice echoed in my head, not as an external voice, but as a part of me, a part of my new nature. Do not waver, vampire, the voice whispered. You have chosen your path. You are a part of me. There is no turning back. I clenched my fists, feeling Orpheus's power flow through my veins, feeling my resolve return. I am here to destroy your device, I said, my voice cold. To end this pocket of space, to continue the transformation process. We will not let that happen, the tall man said, raising his weapon. We will protect this city, protect these people at all costs. You cannot stop me, I said, stepping forward. Not with those weapons, not with any weapons you have. We can try, Eliza said, also raising her weapon. And we will die trying if necessary. I stopped, looking at Eliza with complex emotions. I had once considered her a friend, perhaps the only friend I had in decades, and now she was ready to die to stop me. "Don't do this, Eliza," I said, my voice softening slightly. "Don't sacrifice yourselves in vain. If it's to protect humanity, to protect this world, then no sacrifice is in vain," Eliza replied, her gaze unwavering. And I think deep down, the Lucian Hawk I knew is still there, still understands that. I didn't reply. Instead, I raised my hand, preparing to unleash a destructive ray of energy at the tower, at the device resisting the transformation. But as I prepared to fire, something stopped me. Not their weapons, not Eliza's words, but something else, something within me. A memory. A memory I thought I had lost, sacrificed to the blood curse. The memory of my mother, not her face, not her voice, not any specific details, but the feeling of warmth, safety, being loved. A feeling I had long forgotten, a feeling I thought I had lost forever in the blood curse. And along with that memory, other fragments began to return. Faces, names, feelings I had forgotten. Elizabeth Schumann, the young girl I had killed in Vienna and sworn never to drink human blood again. Alexander Krauss, Eliza's colleague, who had asked me countless questions about history I had personally witnessed. And Sebastian Lauren, the old gardener in 18th century Paris, the only one who had ever seen my true nature and felt no fear. Fragments of a long life of 417 years, not the life of a chosen, a creature of the void, but the life of Lucian Hawk, the vampire who had sworn to protect humanity. And along with those memories, a question arose, a question I had tried to bury, tried to deny since I became one of the chosen. Was this truly what I wanted? Orpheus's voice roared in my head, angry and threatening. "Do not waver, vampire, you belong to me, you are a part of me." But along with that voice, another voice echoed, softer, more distant, but no less resolute. A voice I had long forgot, a voice I thought I had lost forever. The voice of Lucian Hawk, the 417-year-old vampire who had sworn to protect humanity. "You are not what Orpheus made you," the voice whispered. "You are Lucian Hawk, you chose humanity. You chose to protect." I staggered, feeling a battle raging within me. A battle between what I had become and what I had once been, between a chosen and Lucian Hawk, between void and humanity. "Lucian," Eliza called, her voice full of worry, "are you still there?" I looked at Eliza, at her concerned green eyes, and I felt something break inside. Not something physical, but a barrier, a wall that Orpheus had built to imprison Lucian Hawk, to imprison my humanity. And as that barrier shattered, I felt excruciating pain, the pain of separation, of transformation, of purification. I roared, falling to the ground, feeling as if my body was being torn apart from the inside. "Lucian," Eliza screamed, running to my side despite the warnings of the others. "Lucian, what's happening?" I am fighting," I gasped, feeling blood, not the black blood of a chosen, but the fresh red blood of a vampire gush from my mouth, from my nose, from my ears. "I am fighting Orpheus, fighting what he made me." "Fight Lucian," Eliza encouraged, grabbing my hand. "You are stronger than him, you have always been stronger." I squeezed Eliza's hand, feeling her warmth, feeling her humanity. And with that touch, I found strength. Not Orpheus's strength, not the void's strength, but the strength of humanity, the strength of choice, the strength of free will. "I am Lucian Hawk," I roared, feeling something changing inside, transforming, returning. "I am the 417-year-old vampire. I swore to protect humanity, and I will keep that vow." A scream erupted not from me, but from within me, from what Orpheus had placed in me, from what I had become. It screamed in pain, in rage, in betrayal, and then it fell silent. I lay on the ground, gasping, feeling a profound change. My skin was no longer black with glowing red cracks, but had returned to the pale color of a vampire. My eyes were no longer red, but had returned to green, and my wings had vanished completely. I was back. Lucian Hawk was back. "Lucian," Eliza called, her voice full of hope. "Is it you?" "Yes, Eliza," I smiled weakly, feeling a strange joy despite the pain. "It's me." Eliza hugged me, tears streaming down her face. "I knew you were still there. I knew the Lucian Hawk I knew couldn't be defeated so easily." I hugged Eliza back, feeling a warmth I thought I had lost forever. But then I remembered something, and I sat up, eyes wide with worry. Orpheus, I said, my voice urgent. The transformation process, it's still happening. We know, Eliza nodded, her voice serious again. That's why we're here, why we created these pockets of space to resist the transformation, to protect the remaining people. But that alone isn't enough, I said, standing up despite the lingering pain. We need to reverse it, need to close the gate, need to push Orpheus back to where he came from. How? Eliza asked, also standing. We've been searching for a way but haven't found one. I thought for a moment, trying to recall everything I knew about Orpheus, about the transformation, about the gate. And then an idea sparked in my head. The heart of enlightenment, I said, my eyes lighting up. That's the key. It's what opened the gate and it's what can close it. But the heart of enlightenment was transformed, Eliza said, frowning. You said so. Yes, I nodded. But if I can transform from a chosen back into a vampire, then perhaps the heart of enlightenment can also be transformed back. How? Eliza asked, her eyes lighting up with hope. I don't know exactly, I admitted, but I know who might know. Mara, Eliza repeated, confused. Who is Mara? The Queen of Darkness, I said, my voice dropping. The girl I saved at Lake Washington, the girl who betrayed me in Las Vegas. She was one of the first chosen, along with me, and she knows more about Orpheus, about the heart of enlightenment, than anyone else. And you think she'll help us? Eliza asked skeptically. No, I shook my head, but I think I can do to her what I did to myself. I can awaken her humanity, help her break free from Orpheus's influence. That's a big gamble, Lucian, Eliza said, worried. I know, I nodded, but it's our only hope, the world's only hope. Eliza looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. So what do? We go to South America, I said decisively. To the ruined Inca castle in the Andes. That's where Mara is. That's where the heart of enlightenment is. And when we get there, Eliza asked, we will confront Mara with the other chosen. I said, my eyes full of determination, we will find a way to awaken Mara's humanity. Find a way to transform the heart of enlightenment back. Find a way to close the gate and push Orpheus back to where he came from. And if we fail? Eliza asked, her voice soft. I looked at Eliza, at the small town with its ancient buildings and people living in fear, at the blue sky and green earth, at the old world, the world I had once called home, the world I had sworn to protect. Then at least we tried, I said, my voice full of determination. At least we fought. Eliza nodded, a small smile appearing on her lips. Then to South America we go. I smiled back, feeling a new hope rise, a new resolve ignited. I didn't know if we would succeed, if we could reverse the transformation, if we could save this world. But I knew one thing, I would fight until my last breath, until my last drop of blood. Because that is what Lucian Hawk would do, what the 417-year-old vampire who swore to protect humanity would do. And no matter the outcome, that would be my legacy. That would be my story. That would be a scar that even the heavens could not erase. The scar of a vampire who chose humanity.